just pass on as you need. All right, I think we can't wait on the shoppers to come back. So they hopefully will come in and you wouldn't even know when they come in, right? But they're going to be part of us back as soon as they come back. So again, welcome back after lunch. You had a good lunch? Yeah, very tasty, yeah? We thank the staff there that produced the food for us. Really great. So wonderful. We will convey that clap to Sister Grace and her staff. Huh? I mean, with a name like that, it can't but be good. Huh? Grace, it's grace-filled. So thank you. All right. So it gives me great pleasure now, this afternoon. We know it's a rough time. Yeah? A lot of us would prefer to be having horizontal meditation.
Napsio Divina.
But it's okay. And you notice the room was cool? So we have eventually worked it out. And we now have to work out. What are you clapping for? We now have to work out how we're going to harness the heat that we produce. Because if we could harness that heat, we could do many things. Eh? Is our body heat causing the room to get hot? Plain and simple. Right? We only have 3 air-conditioned units. The room is a big room. So we're going to have to work with it. And we hopefully, between the breaks, I would invite us when the breaks come, get out of the room. So we can allow the room to cool. Right? Good? We're working out strategies. So I think the shoppers are back, no? Oh, these are not the shoppers. These are the siesta people, yes. Welcome back anyway. And we are handing you over now to Sister Arlene, who will lead this session with a panel.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back. And we are going to get immediately into the afternoon's first activity. And that will be a panel discussion by 7 very, very brave, very courageous people who will share with you 7, yes. Who will share with you this morning, Father Don. There's one panelist across there. This morning, Father Don spoke about our contextual realities. So against that backdrop, they're going to share with you their stories. All right? I'm going to introduce people as they come up. And it's going to be seamless. We probably just want to stop for one song in between just to stretch a bit. Okay? Brother Winston, would you help us out at that point, and Kwesi? All right? And we're just going to flow, all right? And at the end, we're going to have 10 minutes for Q&A. Okay? So our panel discussion, our panelists include a number of seminarians, novices, postulants, and discerners. And as I said, they're going to be sharing against the backdrop of the contextual realities that gave birth to their vocation, and the contextual realities within which they continue to discern their vocation. They're going to share that. Against that backdrop, they're going to share what encourages them, what helps. And they're going to share, maybe what some of the difficulties as well. All right? So this is their moment. So without much ado, we're going to invite our first panelist, Sister Natania Antoine, who is from the beautiful Isles of St. Lucia. And she's a Cluny novice. So we welcome Natania to the stand. And we invite her to stand so people can see you, Natania.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I begin. The deepest need of the human heart is not pleasure, power, or even freedom. It is for meaning and purpose. A few years ago, I stumbled on this quote whilst reading, which made no sense to me until the dawn of my young adulthood. And it remains with me today as this realization helps nurture my vocation. Well, as was said before, I am Natanya Antoine from St. Lucia, and I'm currently a first-year novice with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Cluny. And it all started at age 16. As I searched for acceptance, I found myself in some senseless trouble, which resulted in my school principal calling my parish priest. And if I remember clearly that conversation, "Stephen, that child in your parish, I need you to talk to her." And remedy to that problem was to get me involved in the parish on a deeper level, a move I consider divine intervention, narrowly escaping a self-destructive path. As I got more involved in parish activities, I found a reason to continue attending Mass, and in doing so, I slowly found my gifts and my talents. I also found out that there is more to life than just pleasure, power, and money. But most importantly, I found myself. I say all of this to you, brothers and sisters, to show that had not my principal, my priest, and my parish community showed a genuine interest in me, I would not have been here today addressing you as a novice. I began to work, and it became quite noticeable to my colleagues that there was something different about me. And that was the passion I had to share my faith with others, and frequently asked whether I had ever considered being a nun. I secretly turned to the internet. I spent several hours during my working days reading testimonies of sisters and reading testimonies of those who had also left religious life. I read the Catechism of the Church. I also researched many congregations. I spent a lot of my time reading, just deepening my faith and my knowledge about religious life. I began taking an interest in praying the rosary and spending a few hours at adoration every day. After much encouragement from my supervisor, we worked in a government office, but she was a very good Catholic example to me. And so she encouraged me to attend or to go to adoration as often as I could, which I did. I also attended various discernment retreats hosted both on a parish and archdiocesan level. The internet served as a source of encouragement for me, as it allowed me to explore many sites, even communicate via email with sisters who would give me general guidelines as well as support in prayer. All that I did anonymously. And I did that because I feared judgment by others, or hearing things like, "Just so if that girl, of all things she wants to do is to be a nun," or "of all people, that girl they will think about," you know. So I did all of that on the internet, sent emails, communicated with sisters by email, just asking questions so that nobody would know that I was interested in religious life. I use social media a lot, frequently Facebook and Twitter, following pages such as Ask a Catholic Nun or Imagine Sisters, and as well as vocationnetwork.org. I read many stories about priests and religious, their own discernment stories. I read lots of things about the faith on social media. And as I began to think more deeply of a possible call to religious life, I publicly informed my parish community on the request of my parish priest. And my parish priest has always encouraged us to attend everything in the archdiocese, whether it be an ordination, to be at Mass on holy days of obligation. He really encouraged us to be good young Catholics. And so I received an overwhelming amount of support as parishioners reminded me that I was in their prayers, especially when the vocations prayer was recited at Mass. The guidance of a spiritual director indeed was a great help for me, especially when I experienced moments of fear and doubt. And coming from a single parent family headed by my mom and me being her right hand, my family was a bit taken aback by my decision. Everybody thought that should go to school and to do something to just raise the head of the family a little. And so they were a bit taken aback, but they said to me that they would encourage me whatever my decision was. And so today I still have their support and also the support of my friends who saw something in me that I did not see in myself. The two congregations I discerned with, both were pillars of support for me, getting to know me not only as I was a possible candidate, but because they truly cared about me being happy and finding God's will for me. All these were keys unlocking the door to a possible call to the religious life. Today, as I continue to discern my vocation, what is most helpful for me is the support of my friends and family, also the support of my parish community back home. People still send me messages telling me that they are praying for me, and the sisters of my community and by extension our congregation, everybody keeps encouraging and supporting me during my difficult times, as well as sisters from other religious organizations when sharing my story, or they share their stories as I have shared my story with many sisters that I've met here today. I find encouragement when I learn that their struggles or my struggles are struggles that were already overcome by people who are now in religious life. And so I find the encouragement to go on knowing that God will be with me and that He will continue to give me the graces that I need to endure on this journey. And so spiritual and as well as spiritual direction, monthly I go to see my spiritual director who helps me in discerning God's will and wherever I am in my life. But most importantly, prayer is the backbone of it all. And as I continue to discern God's will for me, I continue to deepen my spiritual life. And more I see God working in different ways. Sometimes He does not answer directly. He answers through a song or through somebody just coming to say something encouraging to me. And so today, all of this serves as encouragement for me, and I trust that God will continue to guide me and to send encouragement for me in the different forms and fashion that He has. Thank you.
So thank you, Natania. And Sister Natania shared with us a number of the elements of that culture of vocations that we've been talking about this morning. So we move on now to our second panelist, and he is Kenwin Sylvester. Kenwin is transitioning into his third year of theology, and by the claps I gather that Kenwin is no stranger to us. So Kenwin, welcome.
Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Kenwin Sylvester. And yes, somebody asked me if I could just drop the mic when I'm finished. Yeah, anyway. Yes, when I think of vocation and my journey, I think of three images. The first is myself telling some Spanish ladies in the Dominican Republic that I am a lover boy. Yeah. The Lord blessed me with a big heart that I can't be contained by one woman. So that's why I need to be able to give myself totally to everybody and not one woman. You know, so the next image is Kenwin as somebody who likes to solve puzzles. I am a person I'm a solution solver. I like to look for problem solver. I like to look for solutions to many problems. I worked in accounting, and something that I love, and it became part of who I am as a person, always looking for solutions. So when I think of my journey to enter seminary, if you want to talk about context, I would think as somebody who loved the Mass, as somebody who is in love with the Lord, I find myself in a tight spot, trying to figure out the answer to the question that was lingering in my heart for many, many years, which is, Lord, what do you want from me? Lord, what do you want from me? Going through trying to finish up my studies for my accounting program, ACCA, I was a bit frustrated with having to balance my love for the Lord and that unanswered question in my heart and really pursuing something that I thought was my passion, accounting. And the third image is, I think, when I had to make a decision to leave my job and go to a next job, I had to truly trust that what the Lord was moving me to was something better and something more engaging. I was, in one sense, where I was working in my accounting firm, I had reached a point where I thought there was no way to go up, no way for growth. So I was offered another job, of course more money, but further away from my home. I was 2 minutes away from my home before, and I love what it. So all these things came up, and I decided, Lord, I'm going to put this in the Lord's hands. Put this in the Lord's hand and see what happens. And so, long story short, I chose the job further away with more money. And it so happened that the other job that was offered, a few months later, the guy was caught in some fraud activities. And I said to myself, Lord, thank God I trusted you. You know? So for me, when I think about my journey, I think about somebody who trusted the Lord or who learned to trust the Lord through experiences and through my life experience. And I would say that is one of the things that helped me to really make my decision to enter the seminary. One, I see priesthood as a real example of loving the Lord so much that your love overflows into loving people and wanting to help people. I see myself as seeing priesthood as having purpose, seeing priesthood as this profession, this career, this vocation that helps to solve problems, the many problems that society have today. And I see priesthood as a step and a leap of faith, really not knowing what this all is all about, this priesthood, I don't know what it is about, but really trusting that God is going to carry me through and God will see me through the end. And if I am to bring all these things together, I said that would be what, in one sense, I saw in the examples of my parish priests who passed through. They were tired sometimes after long trips, but they still were there giving themselves to people, giving themselves to celebrate Mass, and whether it be something else. They give themselves, and I think I saw that, and that is what tugged at my heart and said, Kenwin, this could be you, many years ago. And so it sowed in my heart that question of, Lord, what do you want from me? I think that's basically it. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, lover boy Kenwin. Okay, so from Kenwin, we move on to Sister Anne-Marie Bain. Sister Anne-Marie is a Carmelite sister. She is a junior professed, 3 years, junior professed. And her ministry, she has a beautiful ministry. She cares for the elderly. So we look forward to what Sister Anne-Marie has to share with us. Let's welcome her.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was kind of a late bloomer because I started to wonder what kind of person I am and what I liked at around my early 20s. So I was searching. I had a lot of friends, and they will invite me to go to their clubs. Like they had Pier 1 at time and 51 Degrees and Bass and stuff like that. I would go with them, and I didn't like it. It didn't bring any joy to me. Then I said, let me try other things. Then they had a U2000 going on. I said, let me try that. I went to U2000, and it blew me away. I said, I like this. It filled my heart with joy, praising God and with God's people all around. I said, I like this. So I started to go to other things like it. I went to Couples for Christ youth group. I went to core group, all the other things that they had at the time. And I realized that this is what I really like. And I started to ask God, like Kenwin, what do you want of me, Lord? What am I here for? What is my purpose? And I continued this prayer constantly because I felt like something was missing. After core, we had youth St. Vincent de Paul in Pity Valley, and I joined that because it was, from early age, God put into my heart a desire to serve. I'm the eldest of 7 children, so I helped my mother with all the ones after me, and I always felt like a mother, a little mother. So I wanted to serve God and his people. So Youth St. Vincent de Paul, we go all the places that the elderly St. Vincent de Paul couldn't go. So we used to climb hills and so on. So one day I was climbing a hill with a friend, and I said, do you find this is enough that we do? And he said, yes, I feel very content. But I was not content. I felt like there was more I can do. So I started to join things in my parish. I was on the parish pastoral council. I was a catechist. I was a Eucharistic minister. I joined core directors. I was part of the group, the planning committee. And I did all these things, and I still felt like something is missing. So one night, I struggled with God. As I was trying to sleep, I couldn't sleep. And I was literally struggling in my bed. And he kept telling me, not with words, but through inspiration, I don't want you part of the time. I want all of you. So I said, but Lord, what's going to happen to my family? Because I help my family with supporting my father, helping him with the bills and so on. He said, I will take care of your family. Who can take care of family better than himself? So after I said, okay, Lord, I'm going tomorrow to talk to my priest, then I fell asleep. And next day, it was a mass for vocations at the parish. I didn't know that at the time. I had to serve, and right after I say, Lord, I'm going to find Father Paul at the time at St. John's de Gomate. And I bounced into Sister Petronilla, and that was it. She said, I was just praying for someone to come to me because we have a vocations retreat at the Mount next weekend, so you can come. I say, Lord, because I wanted 13 children. I like children. I didn't think much about having a husband, but I thought about the 13 children. And the Lord said, you will have everybody's children, if you come to me and give all of yourself to me. So now I'm in the convent. I remember the day I entered, I just felt fulfilled. The thing that I was missing. And in our congregation, we help everyone. We help the little children. We help the aged. We do jobs that nobody does. We have people that come to us and give us their elderly and leave. The less fortunate. And that is what I always wanted to do, help those who are less fortunate and need the help. So I feel fulfilled, and God answered my prayer, what he wanted me to do. My prayer now is, what do you want me to do in Carmel now as a religious sister, So I'm still asking that, but I feel fulfilled in knowing that I'm doing God's will. that he called me and that I said yes. And there are struggles, but I'm always content to know that I'm doing his will and his will is my will. So I just want to sing a little song that sums it up. You could sing with me, not the whole song. Lord, I offer my life to you, everything I've been through. Use it for your glory, and Lord, I offer my days to you, lifting my praise to you as a pleasing sacrifice. Lord, I offer you my life. Lord, I offer you my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Anne-Marie. Okay, so now we move on to Anika Johnson. Anika Johnson is a member of the Living Water community. She is 5 years in temporary profession, okay? And she is involved in multiple ministries. I'm sure you're going to hear a little bit about that. So you want to welcome Anika to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, Living Water is a lay ecclesial community, and it's an expression, a product of the new springtime brought forth by the Holy Spirit post-Vatican II. And within our lay ecclesial communities, a number of vocations are there, but at the core, there are those of us who have answered God's invitation to live a consecrated life, taking evangelical counsels similar to sisters, religious sisters and priests, which is chastity, simple poverty, obedience to God, the church, and the leaders of our community. So how did I get here? I believe my journey in consecrated life, the seeds were first planted in my conversion to Catholicism. I was baptized Methodist, but my encounter with Jesus took place when I was about 14 or 15 within a Pentecostal setting. But I went to Catholic schools all my life. After that encounter, I just wanted to go back to school and tell my friends about the love of God the Father that I experienced. So I was in a Catholic school and I thought, because I was real arrogant, I said, I think I have a mission with this church, But the mission is to convert these Catholics out of this Antichrist thing they were in, very honestly. But it's in challenging the Catholic Church and having teachers, and a teacher who was very instrumental in my conversion is right here today, Mrs. Demetria Williams, engaging me with my questions. I used to bring tracts to school. I don't know if she remembers this. Very anti-Catholic. And she used to answer some. There's one that she has not answered, but praise God, I think I worked it out. But she kind of made me stop and think, wait, Catholics are people alive. Catholics have the Holy Spirit. Because she was passionate about her faith. And I went to Holy Name in Port of Spain. Holy Name Convent in Port of Spain, Trinidad, for those who are not Trinidadians. And I would say that there was a real Catholic culture there. A big part of my conversion was exposition of the Blessed Sacrament happening every day at school. And I think it was when I was in lower 6, I was walking past the chapel, and the Blessed Sacrament was exposed. I said it was a wafer. No one was there, and I said, these Catholics are very, very ridiculous. I thought you're not supposed to leave this wafer alone, right? So I went in, and I sat there because I was curious. I said, God, if you were present here, I want an experience of you, because I was very curious. And in that moment, initially nothing happened, but after, I could not deny a tremendous peace. And I found myself praying in a way and revealing things to God. Well, I thought I was revealing. He knows everything. but talking to him in a way that I never spoke to him before. But I was arrogant. So I left that moment and I said, you have to come better than that. Really, I'm not impressed, God. Arrogance. But I left that moment, I shared it with a friend who was Catholic, and she was over the moon. She was like, Anika, that's what happens in adoration, that peace that, you just can't deny. 2 weeks later, so I was invited to a retreat on Mount St. Benedict with a Catholic group. Teachers who I really admired were there as well. And on that retreat, the last day of the retreat, exposition of the Blessed Sacrament again. I stood outside the door and I was battling with it for a while. But I said, I'm leaving my preconceived notions here, Lord, and I'm going. That peace was there again. And one of the teachers who was there, who had word of knowledge, she said, Anika, God knows your search for truth, your search for something deeper. And I knew I didn't tell anyone else that, so God had to be, Jesus had to be present here. So until my conversion to Catholicism, which was at the end of my school, my time in Holy Name, I used to go into the chapel a lot, just wanting to be near this God of peace. And God revealed himself in so many ways there. My only example of consecrated life, religious life, was the Dominican sisters. And there were a few of them that used to engage me in conversation, Sister Marina, Sister Luna. And I thought to myself, the only way that I could be with Jesus all the time in this way was if I became a sister. That's all I knew. And I think God confirmed that call to consecrated life in ways, in very significant ways, sometimes even in my dreams. I got a vivid dream one day of signing a piece of paper with the evangelical counsels on it. That was part of my journey. But I left school and I got into relationships. And I thought, you know what, that religious life thing was just the hype of conversion after, but I was still Catholic now, going to Mass regularly, getting involved with many charismatic prayer groups, and I needed to see that example again. I guess coming from a Protestant background, I needed to see a church alive. I started to work. I didn't go to university straight away, and one relationship in particular, the guy who I was attracted to, so far from God, didn't care for God. I told God, you have to stay out of this because I want this. I know if I take this to you in prayer, it ain't happening. So I said, God, stay out. But when God is your first love, yes, he's a gentleman, but when he touches your heart first, even when you're running from him, you just can't rest. Because that love is undeniable. So in that relationship, I would say I compromised my purity a lot. And to those in the world, they would probably say, you're not doing anything, because chastity to them means not going all the way. But I know I compromised my purity in the conversations I would have, in the way I would dress, in the just emotions I will evoke, and both ways. So I know at one point I just had to let go of this relationship. I went into university now and still working. At the end of my time at university, there was a restlessness, like the ants in your pants, that I just had to address. And I felt God, like others here saying, explore this vocation thing. And I was scared because I think, like Sister said, not wanting your friends to know what you're doing. So the internet was instrumental in my journey too. I Googled spiritual direction, religious life in Trinidad and Tobago. Two came up, Dominicans and Living Water Community. And the priest I was talking to told me, you have to be in spiritual direction. And I understood the wisdom in that after, when I realized for a long time, I was listening to my voice instead of understanding the movement of God in my life. Why I chose Living Water Community is because I was in ministry, music ministry, and I will go there, and I felt welcomed. There was a moment, Rhonda won't remember this, but I was visiting with a choir, and I wasn't singing that day. And she just came to me not even knowing my name. Rhonda, is one of the founders and the leaders of Living Water Community. And she told me, how come you're not singing? What's this about? And she didn't know my name, but I found it was, wow, she noticed me. So I wanted to go spiritual direction there. And I met Rosemary Scott, assistant leader of Living Water Community. I met her, and she was the one who encouraged me through spiritual direction to start reading the Gospels daily. 2 minutes. Start reading the Gospel daily. And in reading the Gospel, I just found at that time, the time that I chose to start this, that there were things like, come follow me, leave everything. I don't think I told Rosemary very early about my religious life convictions or anything, but she invited me shortly after to a retreat that with a group of young people she was working with. Just long story short, I went to that retreat. I was crying from the first night because I realized, remember I told you, I told God to stay out of that relationship. I never allowed God intimately back into that part of my life. This last day of that retreat, Rose Jackman, co-founder and also the regional director of Living Water, she was there. And she was praying over us, those of us who were there. And when she came to me, she said this: God is giving you a new song of marriage, and it is marriage to him. Instantaneously, this takes me back to Isaiah 62 that I got even before I was Catholic. Like a young man marrying a virgin, so will your God wed you. Like a bridegroom rejoices in his bride, so will your God rejoice over you. Well, with a word like that, what are doing with myself? So I entered about 6 months later, January 2012, to just explore this call. And by the grace of God, I'm still here today. Amen. Sing something.
Okay, thank you so much. Brother Winston, can we just all stand and sing just maybe a verse of something to get the blood flowing? Let's stand and stretch.
Hello?
Thank you, Brother Winston. Okay, so we're watching the time, so we continue with Annalisa Ramsahai. Annalisa has asked me not to tell you which community, which congregation she belongs to, because you're supposed to guess. It will be very difficult, I am sure, but you have to guess, okay?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And I have a little quiz for you today. Which congregation do you think I belong to? Oh, that was quick. So that is an A+ for everyone, right? So as you know, Clooney Sisters, part of our mission is to teach. So I'm getting the experience in teaching, so A+. So today, I am invited to share with you my journey of entering religious life and what encouraged me to enter into religious life. And this morning, Father Don would have shared with you. No one remembers? Right. Right. Father Don would have shared with you an encounter, right? And through suffering, there's a deep conversion. So I'm going to take you back to the very basic family life and the importance of family life in encouraging me to enter into religious life. So, I come from a very small rural area in South Trinidad, and it is a land of doubles. Right, Davey, very good. Right, and in this community, we have about 3,000 to 5,000 people living in this community. It's very small. And my parents lived in this area. Now, this area is a Hindu community, right? And when my mother got married to my father, she was one of the first Catholics to live in this community. She was one of the first Chinese person to live in this community. And also, she was one of the first person to receive secondary school education. It's a highly agricultural area, and they plant basically sugarcane and rice. And most people receive the basic education of reading and writing or primary school level education. So, my mother had 6 children, right, with my father. And we grew up living in basically an extended family with our grandparents, aunts and uncles, and everybody had one room they lived with in their family. So my mother, she wanted to ensure that all her children was brought up in the Catholic faith, and we received at least secondary school education. So she would travel to our city, which is 30 minutes away, at 5 o'clock every morning, as soon as we reached at the age of 5 years old, with all 6 of us, to take us to Mass at 5 o'clock in the morning before we go to school. So she's leaving home 5 o'clock in the morning with 6 of her children traveling to reach the Mass at 5 o'clock in the morning. Right. So she would make sure we kneel down and say the rosary before we go to school. So 2 practices she taught us, which is going to Mass and saying the rosary. So as we grew older, we are now teenagers. It took us about 14 years to completely build our house, and each of us had a part to play. We lift bricks, we mix cement, all little children, and whatever little extra money my parents had, they would buy 1 piece of KFC, and they would share it among all of us. And it was the best thing for us. So, as a family, my father, he was Hindu, and he converted and became a Catholic when we were teenagers. As teenagers, after we received secondary school education, each of us promised ourselves that we would never allow our parents to undergo that hardship again. We would take care of them for the rest of our lives. So each of us, we took loans and we went to university and we got our degrees. And then we got our jobs. And in 2012, we made our mother take early retirement. She was 54 then. We made her take early retirement so we can take care of her for the rest of our lives. and then Our Father after. So, a year after, which is March 1st, 2013, tragedy struck our family. And this is where we experienced deep suffering, suffering to the very core. And it tested our faith. It tested in what we believe in. In 2013, I was 25 at that time. Yes. Right. My brother and my cousin, they were found burnt in the trunk of their car. Now, how would good, hard-working Catholic people experience something like this? Why would God do this? And at that time, they couldn't identify the bodies, so they had to undergo DNA testing. And for that Lenten period, my mother knelt down in front of Our Lady and at the foot of the cross, and she did one thing. She said the rosary. And I was like, why? What is holding on her faith? Why does she believe in this God? Why does she believe in this God who we were good to? And I was angry with God. And I was wondering, what is keeping her and her faith together to be so faithful? So people from all over the world, prime ministers, ministers, everyone came to visit our family at that time. And she made each of them kneel down and say the rosary together with her. Now, this experience really converted me to the very core. It made me realize that there's one certain thing that everyone, no matter what religion they believe in, there's certain that will happen to them in their life. And what is that? Death. We all will die one day. And I had everything. I was even engaged to be married, right? And I left everything to discern my call to enter religious life. What really helped me in my journey is my personal encounter with God through suffering, and it converted me to the very core, and the support of the sisters who were present there in my life at that time. And especially Sister Phyllis Wolf, who was very instrumental in helping me discern with the Clooney sisters. And when I approached her and I told her I was interested in entering religious life, she shared with me her personal stories, her sufferings, her trials. And I realized that sisters are human. Right. So what also encouraged me is that Sister Phyllis ensured that I had a spiritual director and a co-discerner to help me interpret what is going on in my life at that time. And that is Sister Annette Chow. Now, these sisters, they did one simple thing. They had me involved in their community in some way or the other. And they started off with basic skills that they knew I liked, which is cricket and football, right? And I never thought I could do this. I never thought I could help others. And as a postulant, I'm discerning with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Clooney, and they have a beautiful strategy to have me as a young person involved. They saw my potential, and they allow me to spend time in our community in Port of Spain and teaching at one of our convents. Right? And this strategy worked for me because I never thought I could teach. I'm an environmental specialist by profession. Right? I never thought that sisters will be open and welcoming, especially our provincial sister Juliana Alexander. Right? I stayed with her and her community, and they were welcoming. They accept me, and they saw my weakness, and they supported me through that time. So, right, I'll just wrap up. My name is Annalisa Ramsahai. I'm a postulant, and I'm discerning with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Cluny for the past 10 months. And right now, I'm living in community with the novices and professed sisters, discerning whether I should continue religious life and if this is for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Annalisa. Okay, Paul Ram Logan. Paul Ram Logan is a returning seminarian and a former teacher. Okay, so we ask Paul to come and share his story with us.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I'm a person of few words. And secondly, this is the first time I'm doing a testimony. Apparently, that is what it is. So I'm trying to contextualize my journey and looking at it from a historical perspective in relation to for Bishop Gordon. Historically, in terms of my past, and I would break it down into the stages of development. Early childhood, I grew up in a family. We were not well off. My father was an alcoholic. There was eight children. I was the last son. Being growing up poor, simple and poor, I recognized that my mother, she was Catholic, and she dealt with her suffering and her pain through prayer. And she introduced us indirectly through prayer. So through her suffering, she turned to God. And it was my first introduction to prayer. I was baptized at possibly, I think, 10 years old. And she started to send everybody to church. Every one of us went to church. And Father McPhilip at that time was very engaging in our community with the young people. But I was too small to be among the young adults. But it left an indelible mark in my life. In 1988, 89 actually, I was the only one in the family that got a visa to go to the States because of the Nara government. And I left home. I left and lived with some family. And looking back, I had a very, very tumultuous time during that 4 years. Very tumultuous time. It really did affect my stages of development. And I would discover that later on in my formation. So I returned home, actually being deported by my family. They sent me back. And yeah, they sent me back. So I was deported by my family. And I didn't have an education. I was now 18 years old. The 14-year-old child that left has come back an 18-year-old adult. My father couldn't relate to that. I asked my father, I said, Daddy, I want to go back to school. could you please help me? Because I started to go to church and I felt that God was calling me. He went and bought a welding plant. At that point in time, Bishop Robert Lianos was my parish priest. And I went to him and I said, Father, at that time, I need a job. I believe God is calling me and I need 5 O-levels. And I would like to work and go back to school. He said, well, I can't get you a job, but I'll send you back to school. I grabbed that opportunity with both arms. And I went back to school. For 2 years, I stayed with another priest, Father Kenny Spence, in the Presbytery in Chagonas. And I was able to study, and I succeeded in all my O-levels. During that time, Father Locan Murray was the vocational director, and he knew, and it was like he was waiting to find out the results. And within the first week, he said, Paul, what is the results? I said, I got all. He said, good. Seminary opening on the 27th of August. So I said, all right, it hit me now. I just went about, living. And then a week before he said, you register yet? I say, no. He said, listen, if you don't go, I'm not going to talk to you. I went up, I spoke to the rector at that time, His Grace, and he asked me why I wanted to be a priest. And I think it was the experience of my mother in terms of her struggle, being able to be compassionate. And I entered. So that was my first part in formation. I stayed 4.5 years in seminary. During that time, things became monotonous. I felt that I needed time out. So at that time, I went to my rector, Father Mike, and I said I need some time out. I took 15 years. During my 15 years, I went back to school, entered teaching, I got a first degree, and I started to teach. And then after that, I got involved in politics, and I went and do a master's in government, looking at the area of possibly becoming a member of parliament. I liked politics. And then after that, I was still teaching then. I started a degree in law. 1 year law I did. And I was teaching in a school in Caparo, RC. And the parish priest, I wouldn't mention his name at that time. He's from Krapi Chayoma. He does deal with vocations. The parish priest came to the school and said, Paul, you're teaching there? I said, yes, Father. He said, you married? No. You have children? No. You have a girlfriend? No. So what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Go back up, go back up. He encouraged me to get back on the wagon. So what encouraged me was the presence of these men in my life who journeyed with me. They journeyed with me. Indirectly, whether they knew it or not, they left an indelible mark in my life. And I thank every single one of them. Father Matthew, thank you for giving me the encouragement to return. But it was during that period, and as you saw, there was one leaving from one step to the other. And the only thing that kept on coming to my life, because I lived a very secular life for that 15 years, the only thing that came to my mind, thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until it finds rest in thee. To this day, brothers and sisters, my heart is full of rest. So that has encouraged me. What is helping me is my conviction that this is what God wants from me. Is my conviction in myself, in my understanding what priesthood is and knowing as an adult what I am getting into. And what is helping me is having these conversations with these men who have been so helpful throughout my journey. So if I was to sum it up, the presence of a priest in the life and the different stages of development of individuals is extremely important to the fostering of vocations. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Paul. Excellent. Wow, thank you. Thank you for that. Last and certainly not least, we have J-Set Holder. J-Set is a Dominican sister. Let's pick up the Dominicans. From Rosary Monastery. J-Set will share her story.
Thank you, sister. At 3:35, I think I have less than... Okay. Okay. Good evening, sisters and brothers. It is a very difficult task to try to summarize my journey. So I'm glad for the guiding question, what encouraged me and what was most helpful in my journey. First of all, let me start off by telling you straight off the bat that at no point in time in my life before maybe 2010 would I ever have considered being a nun. It was not on my radar. It was not something that I even gave a second thought to. On September 16th this year, I will be 45. I am an only child, and I have a beautiful 24-year-old young man. I think less than 2 months after I was born, I was baptized. I made my first communion at St. Francis RC, what we used to commonly call Belmont Girls RC, in 1982, under the hand at the time of Father David Oliveri. I have very, very little to offer by way of a childhood experience as a Catholic. Because after First Communion, that was it. The church never saw me again until confirmation, which took place at Holy Trinity Parish in 2012. So I was 37, 38 at the time when I made the choice to go back to the church to be confirmed. When I was at secondary school, I always felt like something was missing. I didn't attend a Catholic secondary school. But I had a lot of my friends who were Catholic, in particular, 2 of my closest friends. I tell people I have a triune of best friends. I had 3 best friends. They weren't necessarily each other's best friends, but they were my best friends. 3 of them all at the same time. 2 in particular were Catholic, and I think it was their family experience of Catholicism that kind of held me in the church, unknowingly to us at the time. So the church was not a major part of my life growing up. If I have to say what, I think the defining moment came in 2009, when after, it was what I call, it was the best of years and it was the worst of years as far as my work life and family life and everything was concerned. And if I could probably just interject there and say, in terms of the context of my journey and discerning and faith life, for me it would have to be family life without a doubt, and specifically the struggles of family life, the struggles of living in right relationship with family members, with persons who most times not seen as family, but become your second family, which is your work family, because those of us who work, we spend 8, sometimes more than 8 hours a day in the workplace, and that becomes our substitute family. And after a certain amount of years in the workplace, you know, I started to realize that there's just struggle all around. Struggle in families, struggle in the workplace, struggle in churches, you know. And it all comes down to relationships for me. When I decided to be confirmed, and I almost gave up actually, because I remember calling the parish, and whoever answered the phone, I wasn't getting the satisfactory answer that I wanted, and I thought, look, you know what, let me forget this. It so happened that I got a call this Saturday that the confirmation class, the RCI class, was starting the following day. The following day turned out to be the day of it was a Pentecost Sunday, and I do think that was it was something very significant for me. In the RCI process, you know, trying to be catechized in a nutshell is a very difficult process. I think things really started to make sense for me when we approached the lesson titled Living in Right Relationships. And that is when everything made sense. All the doctrine, all the everything that we were being taught, it did not make sense for me until we started to approach it in context of living in right relationships, living in right relationships with each other, with families, with Jesus. And then everything else made sense. So in 2009, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I actually had one of the best work years of my life. And after returning from vacation, I can't even remember what was the situation that just caused me to kind of throw my hands up in the air and think, you know what, this feels very useless. Everything can't be about the bottom line. People can't be just thought of in terms of dollars and cents. And the day before my birthday, I wrote my letter of resignation, and 3 months after the end of 2009, I left my job without a plan B, a plan C, which is not my modus operandi at all. I was just so tired and fatigued of the rat race, if you call it that. So I left my job without a plan. The following year, I started RCI. So in terms of, there's so many departure points that I can use to jump into my story, but there were stepping stone moments or signpost moments, whatever you want to call it, that God, no doubt, revealed his place and I suppose his authority over my life. As to whether I recognize it as that, you know, is a different story. I couldn't recognize it going forward, but as I look back, I certainly can recognize, you know, as they say, you can connect the dots going back. So for me, the dots were, one, in 2009, leaving my job for what I thought there had to have been something more purposeful and more meaningful to life than just, you know, working 16-hour days just for the sake of living life. You know, you want to make money to be comfortable, to make sure your children have this, and it just didn't seem, it seemed futile. In 2010, while I was home, just kind of catching myself after almost 19 years in accounting, because I got into accounting straight after I left school. There was the earthquake in Haiti, and for those first few months, I remember sitting at home on my laptop, just kind of helping behind the scenes some people who were just trying to get information out to find missing people, and in particular, one was my boss's son, the Trinidadian, the lone Trinidadian who lost his life in the Haiti earthquake. And it was during that time that I started thinking about religious life, because I had always been open to volunteer work. And it was the missionaries of charity that I was first attracted to, simply because of the kind of work that they did, and of course because of the person of Mother Teresa. But apart from that, there was the superficial attraction of, I love a sari, and I love a sari, so their habit was very attractive to me. So I did start doing some volunteer work with them for a short while. And the thing about volunteer work, it doesn't have to be a whole lot of fantastic thing. Anybody who does volunteer work knows that every hand that you can get helps. There's always something to be done. So I would go on Tuesdays and help them clean the chapel, feed the children at lunchtime, that kind of thing. And started a conversation with Sister Grace Lena at that time. In August of 2010, while just sitting out at the lookout up at Mount St. Benedict after Mass on a regular Sunday. I remember the date, though. It was August the 15th. I came across this ad in the newspaper for a theology course. I had not a clue what the studies of theology contained, what it was all about. I just felt reading the ad that this was something that I wanted to do. I even remember going home that evening and pulling the dictionary and trying to remind myself what theology means again. By the Monday morning, I had made the call to the School of Theology to find out if it was something that I was able to enroll in. And Father Matt is smiling because he knows I'm a theology school dropout. But the purpose for me going there really had nothing to do with obtaining a degree. The pastoral studies pillar of the course was what I needed to do. That is what God needed to draw me to, because it was through doing that that my own personal healing, what Sister Julie refers to as going back to your original family pain, that, I think, was what the primary purpose of me going to Mount St. Benedict was. So I began RCIA. I started pursuing studies in theology, and that was an overwhelming experience as it was. The encounter with the clergy there, though, was something that the clergy, the religious information, and being at the Mount and celebrating Mass at the Mount, that was my introduction to the divine office, which was what I fell in love with, which was what drew me to the monastery. But it happened, there were really so many fine points that kind of pulled it all together. Following that, I was more active in parish life, the RCIA program. After I was confirmed in RCI, through the RCIA program, I became a sponsor. And I just was running down every diocesan program that was offered. I looked through the Catholic News and any program that was there, I would go down Laramie. Wherever there was a program that I had the time, I would go. And all of this was really leading to building up my faith life, catechizing me in a sense, the non-traditional way. My encounter with UE chaplaincy while I was a student at the School of Theology. All these little things were just kind of the little dots setting themselves up. And in 2010, at the end of my first semester, towards the end of my first semester, I had a conversation with Sister Carla Thomas and Brother Colin Jackson. And I expressed to them that I was thinking of religious life. And they said to me, well, there's a Vocations Conference weekend coming up soon. Look out for the ad in the Catholic News. They were, of course, thinking about the Sins in our community. They were expected to have theirs. The ad that I saw, at the time I didn't know one community from another. When I saw the ad, I responded to it. The ad that I saw was for the Rosary Monastery, their Comsey weekend. And it so happens that one of the young ladies who was with me in that particular group is here now. And it has been quite a journey for us. And from that encounter in 2010, I just never left the community. It was not even at that time, though, a discernment in that sense. It was part and parcel of my faith development. It was only until last year, actually, that I said, yes. We don't have enough time for me to go into the whole nitty-gritty, but basically, it was the encounter with religious, the encounter with clergy in the classroom setting, in that whole Lectio Divina type setting that the classroom offered. The pastoral studies that forced me by way of coursework to dig up into myself and analyze myself. Courses like Ethics of Human Sexuality with Father Clyde Harvey, Introduction to Psychology for Ministry with Father Robert, Sister Kay. All of those things kind of started pulling me together for entering into this thing that God would be calling me, which I would be fighting tooth and nail, and still to an extent fighting. And fighting, when I say fighting, I'm talking about basically, I was kind of apprehensive. I told Trisha I'm not sure that I'm the person that you'll want to address a vocations crowd, because I have a lot of no responses right now. No to a lot of things that just kind of fall into the bin of living in right relationships and what that means and the hard work that involves. It is terribly hard work to build right relationships. But if we don't do it, I think all of the efforts that we make towards programs and parish life come to naught. And if I could plug one thing, it's not that I'm not a student in psychology or anything. I actually was considering it, but the one thing I can impart to you in terms of my journey, it has been making the effort to do the OPT course, the OPT program, Original Pain Therapy, really making an effort in the pastoral care studies and analyzing myself and trying to unearth and unpack who I am. Because until you and unless you understand that, we will continue to have interactions at a certain level and no more. And ultimately what that means is our relationship with God would really just be here and no more. And when I talk about the struggle that I'm having, it's really the saying no to all these different situations and contexts, which ultimately, in saying no to those at this stage, what I am saying no is saying no to God in this journey. So at 10 months into my postulancy, I suppose if I say it out loud here now, I'm kind of committing myself to it, but on Monday gone was marked 10 months, and I agreed to say yes to going forward into the novitiate, God willing. But in terms of vocations, one of the things that I, just to quickly before I close off, wanted to reiterate is that I used to have a problem with when at Mass I would hear, let's pray for vocations, and all we're praying for are really priests and religious, but we're not praying for vocations with the understanding that the priesthood and religious, that's one vocation. Married life is another vocation. The single life is another vocation. And altogether, that's what makes up the church. And all of those, in order for those to be effective, right relationships can't be ignored. So we need to take advantage of the resources that we have in the parish to help us become better selves so that we can relate to each other better and really build the Church of God and not be dealing with the same issues over and over ad nauseum. So, thank you for allowing me this space.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. So let's give another round of applause to our panelists for their courage. And we will have, can we take just two or three questions? Do we have enough time? Oh, yes, I know. We're way over time. But maybe just 1 or 2 questions for the panelists. No questions?
Somebody teased me this morning. She said to me, Father, you're not reaching young people. So I'm asking you, how can vocations directors, directresses, novice masters, novice mistresses, etc., how, as young people fresh in the walk towards discernment, what you think we can do to reach young people today in 2017, the millennials?
Thank you very much, Father. So I had the opportunity to work with Form 2s, 3s, and 4s at a secondary school in Port of Spain. And for example, in my Form 4 class, I did an evaluation with them. And 4 students out of the 31 students in the class said, yes, sister, I'm interested in becoming a religious sister. So that is 13% of the entire class, and that is one class. And I allowed them to do a little research. I said, are we reaching out to you? And they said, sister, your mere presence is speaking to me. I know that I can come and talk to you privately and tell you, yes, sister, I want to enter religious life, but I'm afraid to speak, so I go on Google and I secretly search which congregations should I enter or which congregation I am interested in. So we live in a digital world, and my class did a research, and in the Newsday in 2015, they found out that 90% of young people between the ages of 16 to 40 do not read the newspaper. They are looking at free marketing, which is social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and they are receiving information quicker than CNN, quicker than BBC, and they are in the know, and this is how they're communicating now through our cyber world. So I asked them if they knew how to write a letter. They said, sister, what is that? I asked them, do you know the 10 Commandments was written on a tablet? They said, sister, is it an Android or an iPad? And they were very serious. So we live in a digital world, and our communication is a strategy we should be looking at into reaching out to young people.
Yes. So I want to be brief again, but I think the first thing is, as Sister said, we have to be in the schools. If we're not in the schools, we can't meet with children. When I look around at Mass, I am depressed. Because one of the things for me, you see, I get passionate. One of the things for me, I look around, and sorry to say, it's only old people and gray hair I see in church. There's a lot more people. So first to begin, we can't say we're going to stay in the pews and just announce vocation, something happening somewhere. Who are we reaching? Nope, they're coming. These people, the grandparents and things, not telling the children, come to some vocation thing. So we need to be where the children are. And that means whether it be going to the schools to talk about it, let's be in the schools. We have to go there. You know, so that's the first thing. We have to get to where they are, whether it be social media, whether it be in the schools, whether it be all the places that children hang out, that's where we need to be. So we need to talk about that. What's my next point? No, I think as well, one of the other things is we need to show young people today that there is more to life than what social media and the world is proposing. There's more to life than just a career. You know, priesthood and religious life has purpose, and it's something beyond ourselves. So we who are on this journey as well have to show people, have to live this life with joy and happiness, that people realize, hey, there's more to life and there's happiness beyond just accumulating wealth, but giving of ourselves totally to the Lord. And so I think when we do that, then we will be able to convince young people that, listen, this is something that is worthwhile and is worth taking a step and a chance to. Thank you.
Just to add a little to that, I think, yes, it's important to meet young persons in cyber world, but I think we are there searching for what, even though we can't articulate it, searching for intimacy and the meaning. And I think when, yes, you meet us there, I think we want to be taken out of there to some real relationships. Because a point about the millennials is that we're narcissistic, right? But the real truth of that is that we just want to be known. We want people to accept us to who we are. And I think that journeying with us, that intimacy with us, is what is going to keep us.
You want? Oh, once you all know you have taken up the break, so we don't have any break again.
Hi, my name is Luke Silva. I'm a millennial. I'm also a pre-seminarian under Father Matthew Duro at Karipachaima, and I had the privilege of doing school ministry at Fatima. And one of the things that I see that comes up quite a lot, and I saw it at the core retreat as well, is children nowadays, young people nowadays are truth seekers. We are always trying to weigh and balance what makes sense, and we are being thrown at us facts and figures and things of that nature, very absolute things. So I realized that really abstract answers and words like faith and things, that appears very, very fluffy in their minds. And what was stunning to me is that at the Form 1 level, you hear they really pride themselves on name dropping. So like Sigmund Freud and Feuerbach and Stephen Hawkins, and these are the names that they call at you, and these are the philosophies that they come at you with. And my thing is, if you, first of all, if you don't know these people or you don't know their arguments, you're immediately dismissed. And you're immediately put into the misogynistic, bigoted kind of place. So that's part of the issue there. The next thing is, if however, they respect this, if however you are able to say, well, do you know the arguments of St. Thomas Aquinas? Do you know St. Ignatius? If you're not able to rebuttal, then that's even worse. And I think that's really our problem. You could not know the other arguments, but you could have an idea of what arguments the church has been dealing with and what things we put forward as facts, because that's what they want, facts. They want things that sound logical. They want facts and figures and all these different things. So I think as the young people coming in, especially like people who are interested in vocations, to get them to be interested in the priesthood, you have to make priesthood relevant. You have to make spirituality relevant, because they see it as ignorance and they see it as this archaic practice. But there is a relevance to the practice. There's an understanding, there's a deepness, and the church has a very rich intellectual tradition, which I'm now getting into because I've joined theology courses and all this kind of thing. But they are not readily exposed to that level of understanding. Yet still, they could go and look up anything on Eastern and Western philosophy. And I find that we need to engage with them because they're smart. They're very, very intelligent. And it's not to say that it'll go over there. It will not go over their heads. They will go above it. So, to get these young children, we need to engage them as vigorously as the secular world is engaging them. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. My name is Clifford Menu. I'm from Ghana, the west coast of Africa. We have certain practices. I'm subject to be corrected if these practices can be implemented in the Caribbean here. First of all, our priests in daily masses, in their homilies, talk about the faithful allowing their children to become priests and nuns, principally. You hear it in church often. Secondly, we have vocation directors. The Spiritans, we have one, and that is how I got to know or think about wanting to try. The parish I come from has always been Spiritan. They know me from infancy, but I never thought of wanting to join the Spiritans. The diocese has a vocations director. We have one. So on Good Shepherd's Sunday, he came to preach vocations. I actually and sincerely was there with my girlfriend. So I said, well, I'll give it a try. And I entered, I've loved it, and I've stayed for 10 years. If we can have vocations directors who know the faith, believe in religious life, in the priestly life, and go to preach it in schools with the permission of our bishops, in schools, in churches, as we do back home in Africa, because we have abundance of vocations, but we still preach vocations. We just don't sit back and say, they will come. Who is coming? If I'm sick and I sit home, I will die. God has given me the sense to go to the hospital and be healed. So I'm humbly asking if we can have vocations directors, not those ones, not those priests and religious who think traditional priestly life, traditional religious life is archaic and is no longer important. Not that kind of priest you must send to preach vocations. You wouldn't get any fruit. But those like us who believe that there's still vocations out there, because I believe we still have vocations. And so if we can have vocations directors who will go around schools and parishes to preach vocations, I believe that will help. Well, that's the culture I'm coming in from. If it's possible here, why not try it? Thank you.
One of the things that coming out is about schools and getting into the schools. We have different contexts here. Eh? For example, Guyana will tell you they only have one Catholic school in the city. So if we only stay in the school in the city, that one, we ain't get into the young people anyway. So you have to be creative, I think. It's not just only about getting into the schools, it's about connecting with people. It's about building the right relationships. I'm an uncle. Huh? Many of us who are priests and nuns and sisters, we come from family. You're connecting with family at that level, at young people. I got 14 nieces and nephews. Right? So I think that we have to find creative ways to connect to the young people, but don't only say it's in schools, because some of the contexts in which we operate in the AEC is not really with schools only. All right? Now, sister, you okay with that? Now, because we have another important, thanks to the panel,